Hello! Here is a fabulous video about the organization of the Constitution. We're going to go through the organization of the Constitution in a couple of different videos. So this one is just kind of to get you started. So our Constitution can be broken down into three separate sections. We've got the Preamble, then we've got the Articles, and then we've got the Amendments, okay? The Preamble is kind of like the introduction to an essay. This is where our founding fathers basically said, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it. This is our reason for creating this document, okay? The next part down here are the articles, and we have 7 articles in our Constitution, and that's kind of where we go to see the structure of our government, how it's going to be set up. And the last part of our Constitution are the amendments, and we have 27 amendments to our Constitution. The first 10 of them were ratified or accepted at the same time, and we call those the Bill of Rights. So jumping into Article 1. So Article 1 sets up the legislative branch. And the legislative branch, as you know, is Congress. Congress is made up of the House of Representatives and the Senate. And the two of them together, their main job is making laws. So requirements to be a senator or a representative. If you'd like to serve in the House of Representatives, you have to be at least 25 years old. You have to have been a resident of the district that you're going to represent, and you have to have been a citizen for at least 7 years prior to being elected, okay? So you don't have to be a natural-born citizen in order to serve in the House of Representatives. Representatives also serve 2-year terms. So every 2 years, every even-numbered year, we have a congressional election, and every time we have a congressional election, all 435 of our House members are up for re-election. I did it backwards. Let's talk about the Senate now. So the Senate has the same responsibility as the House. They have fewer seats available in the Senate. The Senate's often called the upper house of Congress, okay? And in order to be a senator, you have to be at least 30 years old. You have to live in the state that you're going to represent, or at least have residency there. And you also have to have been a citizen for at least 9 years prior to being elected. So a few things come in with Article 1. We have something known as the elastic clause, or the necessary and proper clause. And when we get to our Congress unit later on this year, we'll really dive into this more. But the elastic clause, also known, like I said, as the necessary and proper clause, basically gives Congress the power to create any law that they think is necessary. Okay, so why do we call it the elastic clause? Because it stretches the power of Congress, okay? Congress also has expressed and enumerated powers. So if we look in Article 1 of the Constitution, you'll be able to see specific expressed powers that Congress has. They have the authority to coin money. They have the authority to declare war and all of those different things. So moving on then to Article 2 of the Constitution. Article 2 establishes the executive branch, which of course includes the president, the vice president, and the cabinet. So in order to be president of the United States, you have to be at least 35 years old. You have to have lived in the United States for 14 years, and you have to be a natural-born citizen. You have to have citizenship at birth, okay? So those are the 3 requirements. Those are the only constitutional requirements we have for president of the United States. Our presidents serve 4-year terms, and they can serve no more than 2 terms or a total of 10 years, okay? And we'll think about how that happens in just a bit. So the presidents also have what's known as the wild card clause. So if you look in Article 2 of the Constitution, it says something along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing, that the executive power of the United States shall be vested in a president. It doesn't say what executive power is and what executive power isn't. So we often call that the wild card clause because, just like a wild card in Uno, it can kind of be whatever you want it to be. So presidents have used that in multiple ways throughout history. Article 3 sets up the judicial branch. The judicial branch includes the Supreme and federal courts, okay? So we'll talk about the federal court structure later on. But the requirements to be a member of the Supreme Court are fun. There are none. The only requirement that you have to meet, according to the Constitution, is that you have to be appointed by the president, and your appointment has to be approved by the Senate. Okay, there's no citizenship requirement. There's no age requirement. I mean, we have to assume that the Senate is probably not going to approve like a 16-year-old to be the Supreme Court Chief Justice. But also, fun fact about the federal court system, these people serve life terms. So once they're appointed, they're there. They're it. There's no election. There's no re-election. There's no campaigning. There's nothing. Okay? But they can, as we saw in the checks and balances video, they can be impeached and removed from office if need be. So the Supreme Court, of course, is at the very top of the food chain when we're talking about the judicial system. We also have the appellate courts, which are going to be right underneath them, and the district courts, which are going to be the lowest level of federal courts, where most of the federal cases will begin, okay? And the last thing that I want to talk about with this, as soon as that goes away, is jurisdiction, okay? So the term jurisdiction refers to the authority that a person has within a certain area, okay? So to kind of put this in perspective, my jurisdiction is in our classroom, okay? I'm in charge of our classroom. That's my area of authority. So the Supreme Court has jurisdiction in a multitude of different ways. They can hear cases that deal with issues that pop up between the states. They can hear issues dealing with constitutional protections. Most of the time, cases are going to have to go through the federal court system. So they're going to start with the district courts, move up to the appellate courts if the person doesn't like the decision, and then finally end with the Supreme Court. And with that, I'm going to stop. We will review what we need to review in class. If you have any questions, let me know.